Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons Arbor Adventures, uh, Season 1, Episode 6. We're going to continue talking about the Sun Elf, Rogue Assassin, Dolos, and his epic direwolf, Owie. All right? So, at this point, Sun Elf, Rogue Assassin, Dolos has traveled to Candlekeep. He is going to find where he will find his brother, Ferrowyn. So we learn a little bit more about his brother at this point. And one of the reasons why is I had to kid out and explain his brother, for the campaign. And so what we know is that Dolos belongs to a Sun Elf family. Now, the Sun Elves are the high elves of the Forgotten Realms, and they are exactly what you traditionally expect Sun Elves to be. Right? They are, they're exactly what you expect Sun Elves to be, like haughty, aristocratic, and so Dolos's family is really interesting in that they train assassins in the light, right? So they're Sun Elves. That's extremely unusual, right? But they also have an import-export. It's not like every Netflix show that that deals with anything that's any kind of illegal substances is import-export. So their import-export business is and I feel bad for people who actually own legitimate import-exports, because that's it's got to be rough, right? Just because it's where you're like, that word's kind of ruined. That phrase is kind of ruined at this point. So their import-export business is herbs. They collect herbs in the forest, right? So Dolos was trained by his grandfather, and then he also worked for the Zentarum when he left his Sun Elf enclave. But his brother, and so Dolos was trained by his grandfather. Dolos's grandfather also trained Ferrowyn, but it did not take, right? Like, his Ferrowyn was very obstinate, did not learn, and really wasn't interested in learning the assassin ways from his family, right? So Ferrowyn actually began to take seriously this herb collection business, this business that the whole family was like, yeah, we have a herbs collection business, air quotes, going in. And the reality is the Sun Elves, they live in this enclave that's surrounded by a pristine forest. And while they're, saying, oh yeah, herbs collection, that's very real. Like, they live in an amazing forest where there's lots of medicinal herbs, and there's lots to be found in the forest. So Ferrowyn actually did that work, right? So we learned that about Ferrowyn. So Dolos follows him to Candlekeep, does a quest to get a book that is worthy of putting into the collection of Candlekeep. And get this, I love this about Candlekeep. So Candlekeep is the largest library in all the Forgotten Realms, right? And anyone can enter if they bring a book for the collection. So if you bring a magic book, if you bring a book of lore, if you bring a major book, it essentially earns you entrance into Candlekeep, which is pretty incredible, right? So he does this quest, he gets a book, and he's able to enter into Candlekeep. There he finds Vornway, his brother, and he attempts again to talk to Vornway. Now, before that happens, there's something very interesting that happens where before that happens, Dolos is going to talk to his brother, and Grax talks to him and says, you're gonna have to say something different this time, right? You can't just ask him a bunch of questions, give him no truths, and ignore the fact that Vornway, his girlfriend, is dead, right? So Grax kind of reminds Dolos, hey, your dark brooding loner works great as a Sun Elf rogue assassin, but when you're trying to, have a conversation with your brother, it isn't going to work, right? Like, so so everything's set. Dolos goes into Candlekeep. Candlekeep brings him right to Dolos, and brings Dolos right to his brother Ferrowyn. And Dolos, goes in and says, "Hey, I've come here." And his brother's like, "Why are you here? What are you here for?" And I love this. The Dolos, the Gold Dragon Master who runs Dolos as a player character, he said, "I'm here because I want you to come home with me." Right? Now this is fascinating, right? So Dolos is this super dope assassin who is making his way across the Forgotten Realms, and he has dealt with Forgotten Realm mercenaries, left 2 of them for dead. He has dealt with Rafig Greywander, left him dead, and he has been the only witness to the opening skirmish in the war between the woodcutters and between the Phandalin woodcutters and the Phandalin miners, Phandalin human woodcutters and the Phandalin dwarf miners, right? So he's done a lot. Like, and there's this, and he is collecting allies. Parak and Grax are with him. Like, they have essentially connected themselves to him because the opportunity around him is great, right? There's almost like this. There's like this, this fate magnet around him. Like, great things are happening around him, right? Actually, I should say important things are happening around him, right? So Ferrowyn, and so basically Dolos says, "I want you to come home." So Dolos is the Gold Dragon Master is telling me, I'm heading home, right? I'm a trained assassin. My family is still training assassins. I'm going to collect my brother, and the 2 of us are going to go home, and we're going to handle some business, right? Does that mean that Dolos shuts down the assassin training and actually helps his brother formally take the fake business to a real business, right? Do they go back to complete Ferrowyn's training? Do they go back to make peace with the family, and then break with the family? And and the 2 of them are going to no longer be, and Dolos puts down the blade? I don't know, right? Like, but boy, am I interested in finding out, right? Or some other, path that I didn't even mention, right? And I think that's the great thing that I'm absolutely loving about this Arbor Adventure campaign is I'm setting up the pins every week, but the Gold Dragon Master is knocking those pins down. He's making the spares, right? And he's setting into motion chaos that is incredibly entertaining on both sides, on the Dungeon Master side, and actually, you never know you don't really know if the Dragon Masters are having a good time. There's only one metric: do they continue to sit at the table? That is the only metric, right? Like, you can, and actually the reality is you can't ask your players anything. They're going to say a bunch of things. Extremely few players are going to be like, "Oh, thanks for doing all this preparation. It sucks." Even if it does, they're not going to tell you that, right? Most people are civil and kind and tolerant. Your only metric to know if a Dragon Master is having a good time at your table is if they continue to return to the table. That's the metric. That's how you know what you're doing is succeeding. People continue to come, right? So, and of course that does stop, right? It sounds wild. I was talking to my my hairdresser, the person who does my hair, who cuts my hair, right? And she had a campaign, and it fell apart simply because people moved, right? Like, she had a wife and a husband. The wife got pregnant. They started to miss because of that, and then they moved, right? And the whole thing fell apart. It wasn't because she wasn't a good dungeon master. It was just because, physical table games are extremely difficult to run, and I think that's definitely one of the reasons why online games are continuing to grow, right? So Dolos says, "Hey, I want you to come back with me." So at that point, Ferrowyn says, "Listen, I understand that you want me to come back with you, but here's what's happening right now is that I am actually Um, I'm here at Candlekeep, and I have taken over Vornway's position. She was researching Vecna. She found out that that this blade, Thove, the hate of Vecna, when someone is killed with it, it sends the soul to Vecna. Vecna then goes into a battle of will with that soul. He always wins because he knows, right? He hears the whistle of the soul coming to him, and he's in a Wolverine crouch, ready to defeat whoever arrives in this battle of wills. But Vornway was convinced that a good soul who knew that when they were killed by the Thove blade and went in ready to have this battle of wills with Vecna could actually shove Vecna to the back and become the dominant sentience within Vecna's power husk, or all that is Vecna, right? And could make Vecna a back seat in his own body, right? And could then use all of his power from all these different souls for good, right? So Vornway has this plan to turn everything around and make Vecna, do this. And so Ferrowyn says, I'm going to complete her work. So I need to find the blade, and then I need to find a cleric who's ready to be killed by the blade, and that's going to complete Vornway's work. And the reason I'm going to do this is because Vornway has passed, and I need to honor her, because I loved her, and I want to honor her, right? And then he says to Dolos, will you come with me, right? And this is wild. Now, what's fascinating is Dolos is listening to his brother and his brother's like, I gotta find this blade. Like, this blade is literally sitting under the cloak of Dolos. Dolos has Dolos has the hate of Vecna on his person. Like, this blade that Ferrowyn, his brother, is looking for is literally 3 feet away from him, right? And Dolos says, yes, I will do this with you. And so they leave Candlekeep together, searching for a blade that's on his belt and searching for a cleric or paladin or any good aligned character who can defeat Vecna. And that is where we ended session 6 of Arbor Adventures. In my humble opinion, it was awesome. Every single word you just heard was my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.